Awesome, guys. We're getting everything turned on. This machine needs to be turned on and turned up, getting the volume connected to Facebook Live. We're going to be moving everything over here in just a second. So thank you so much for your patience. I cannot wait to share this information with you. Just making sure we're live. Yes, we are on that one. Let's get that out of the way. Awesome. I'm going to share a screen here too. But no, welcome. I am Dr. Jason Day. I'm a pediatric and family chiropractor, and I am here live from my very quiet and sanitized practice at the moment. And we're going to be tackling a subject called stress and anxiety. And this was here long before anything that's stressing us out currently in our businesses, in our life, in our homes, in our schools. And it'll be here long after. And it's a discussion that we need to have. So tonight, we're going to be talking about change, the change that you're looking for in your life, in your child's life, in your helping of patients' lives. We are talking to doctors and other specialists. And the fact of the matter is that some of these statistics are troubling. And we're going to dive into the facts and the science. But tonight is not about my opinions. It's not about my feelings or my thoughts. It's about the facts. It's the science. And we want to give you a blueprint. And we want to give you some strategies. I want to be your GPS for at least 30 minutes. So hang in with us, lean in with us for about 30 minutes. And we're going to give you some strategies and blueprint. We'll give you a recording and some tools at the end of this so that you can stay connected no matter where you're at in the world or in the United States. I am here to help. So let me get started share my screen here. 1 second. All right, let's get that one. Beautiful. Pull this all up. Perfect. So that's us. Anxiety and stress. It's time to talk a little bit about myself. A lot of people hopping on this call know me. They're practice members. They see us around town. They're colleagues and other chiropractors, other doctors and specialists. But for those of you who have never heard of me and want to know a little bit about me, here I am. I'm Dr. Jason Day. I'm a pediatric and family chiropractor. My practice here is in North Carolina. And my claim to fame, though, is I'm father to these 5 amazing human beings. 5 boys, yes. So prayers for my wife. She's with them right now all by herself. She does it all the time. She rocks it. But this is Oliver. This is Elijah. This is Finn, Jace, and Silas. And they are why I do what I do. They're why I love what I do. And it's not because I want to create this amazing life for them. Yes, that's a piece of it. But I have a front row seat to their amazing life. What am I talking about that? Things like anxiety and stress and ear infections and asthma and ADHD, they simply haven't touched our home. And there's reasons for that. And there's so many kids that are sick and disconnected right now. But let's think about it. When I was a little kid in the early 1980s, there was always that one kid in class that was kind of pudgy. Maybe that one kid in class that was kind of sickly, that had allergies. But if we fast forward 30 plus years, there's just one kid in class that doesn't have a diagnosis, that doesn't have a prescription that they're taking. That's not a judgment statement. That's a reality. The statistics are shifting, and they're soaring. And there's something that's shifting out there that's not our genetics. The idea that our genetics have changed that much in the last 30 years is absurd. There's no scientist on the planet. There's no doctor on the planet with half a brain that would say, hey, it's our genetics. Genetics play a role in about 8% of all known diseases ever. The other 92%, we have a say-so. We have a hand in that. We have a responsibility to shift that. And they are why I do what I do. And I want to talk about why they're healthy and why a lot of our kids are sick. But let's dive in a little bit deeper here. If I'm going to be your GPS over the next 25 minutes or so, I think it's very important that we have to type in a destination. If we're going to a destination that's health, I think we have to define what health is. Now, I've had the pleasure and the honor to go speak to a lot of corporations, to a lot of schools, to teachers. Apparently, that's a stressful job. Joking, my dad's a teacher. I know I jokingly say it's the second most stressful job next to the guy that has to defuse bombs. It's a stressful position. And when we're giving these workshops, we want to clearly define where we're going. Otherwise, it's anybody's guess. So I usually ask them, what is health? Keep it simple. And you know what the most popular answer is? The most popular answer in corporations and teachers, it's very simple. They say, just not sick. And again, I don't ever want to be sick. I don't want to have the flu. I don't want to have the coronavirus. I don't want to have a cold. But the definition of health is just not sick. That can't be it. There has to be more to that. And I want to give you a very vivid example and a different category of how that woefully underexplains what health potential truly is. So in another category, let's think about this. I'm married. You saw my 5 kids, my amazing wife, Elisa. We actually have been married for over 14 years. But at our 10th wedding anniversary, it just so happened that we had a workshop, or actually an event down in the same exact town, a training event for me, but it was right at our 10th anniversary in the same exact area where we got married in South Florida. So we thought, you know what, why not? This is a business trip, but we had an amazing time, learned a lot, but we also got to go right back to the very place where we committed our lives to each other. We set our vows to each other. And it was a magical day. Not just, I mean, it's just as magical as our wedding day. So we had this amazing trip down there. She had bought this new amazing dress, had her hair done by a stylist, did makeup for about an hour. And we found ourselves going back to the very location, hadn't been there in 10 years. And every single one of those memories, every single one of those touch points and sensations came flooding back to us as we came back to this place, and we were speechless. We were wandering around this space. I can't begin to describe how beautiful this place is. It's like no other place in America, but that's not the point. But we found our way just wandering around through this back to the very location where we had set our vows 10 years to the day before that. Now, could you imagine after 10 years of marriage, 5 kids, living in Europe, living all over the world, creating this amazing life, if I was to look my wife in the eyes at that perfect moment and said, wow, you look not ugly today. The day's over. Maybe the marriage is over. I guarantee you the day is over, because there's a profound difference between being beautiful and just not ugly. If I had to choose between being just not poor and abundantly wealthy, kind of want to go to that side. There is a profound distinction, a measurable distinction between being just not sick and being healthy. And we're going to talk about that gap. We're going to talk about how do we close that gap, because in that gap is not just anxiety, it's depression, it's chronic sickness, it's autoimmune disorders, it's cancer. In the gap is our kids, it's our parents, and it's ourselves. And if we don't close this gap, we're closing out on the opportunity to live a life of health and purpose. But why even bother? Why am I even here at 9 o'clock in North Carolina talking to a random group of people trying to give you strategies? Again, I'm not here to give you opinions. I'm here to give you the facts. And here's the facts. An overwhelming majority of hospital visits are stress-related. Annual cost to employers for stress-related healthcare and missed work, $300 billion per year. And you know how they calculate that number? They take a person's salary, and if they miss a day, they can chunk down those hours and say, wow, that cost us this much money. But let's be honest. How many times have your colleagues and coworkers showed up to work, they punched the clock, and they spent the day, the rest of the day, trying not to punch anything else? You can show up to work stressed, burned out, with a migraine, headache, tension, anxiety. I guarantee you, it's physically, neurologically, and scientifically impossible to be productive when your body is stressed. The top causes of death in the United States are all linked to stress. 63% of college students state that they've experienced overwhelming anxiety in college. 20 plus veterans commit suicide every single day. Chronic stress is linked to all those deaths, and also suicides have increased 33% since the late 1999 there. Here's some interesting facts down here in the bottom corner here in blue. They're a different color for a different reason. We'll talk about that in a second, but here's some facts for you. 1 in 4 have a chronic illness. 1 in 9 have asthma. 1 in 6 will be learning disabled. 1 in 5 have a defined mental disorder. Autism and ADHD on a meteoric rise, as well as anxiety. Now, why would I put those in blue? Any guesses? That's our kids. That's children. That's kids. They haven't had 40 years to screw it up. They don't have a mortgage. They don't have a deadline. They have nothing on the outside that should be stressing them out that much. Why are we seeing these categoric numbers? We've shut down society for 2% of the population. Why aren't we talking about the 25% of the population? The 1 in 9, the 1 in 6, not the 6 people in Wake County that have passed away from coronavirus, but the 1 in 6 kids that have a learning disability, the 1 in 5 kids that have a defined mental disorder. I'm not making light of the current situation. It's deadly. It's a challenge. It should be dealt with. But why aren't we talking about these numbers? Because this will be here before, and it'll be after this virus passes along. Viruses are self-limiting, but stress is not. In fact, human beings are the only animal on the planet that can sit alone in a room by itself, himself, herself, and make themselves sick. The idea that stress doesn't directly, immediately, and continue in a lifelong impact our physiology and our health, it's just not working for us anymore. We have to deal with the facts. We have to deal with these statistics. And yeah, I'm passionate about it. I'm bringing emotion to it, but these aren't emotional facts. They're facts. They're exactly straight from the CDC. That's why I bother. So let's talk about this destination, this definition of health. Health is a state of optimal mental, physical, and social well-being, not merely the absence of symptoms or disease. What do I mean by that? Well, that's not me. That's the World Health Organization's definition. That's a collection of thousands and thousands of doctors coming in saying, yep, this is it. Because think about it. If I was an Olympic athlete, the physical specimen of health with a flawless diet, my life dedicated to health and fitness. If I was going through divorce or anxiety, you have a strong argument that I'm not healthy, even though I look amazing on the outside. In fact, the other end of that spectrum is true. Some of the happiest, emotionally happiest, spiritually grounded people I know, 350 pounds. It's not a judgment statement, but that physical reality will catch up no matter how much they love Jesus. It will catch up when they're probably going to go see him a little bit sooner, because health is a state of optimal function. It's 100% of you working at 100% of the time. If we're going to talk about health, we got to avoid death. That's the ultimate not healthy state. So what are some of the things that are killing us? We talked about stress being directly rated to the top 6. These are just 3. The number 1 killer in the United States is heart disease. Over 600,000 deaths per year. That's 1 in 4 people. I actually learned this in some postdoctorate study that the first symptom in almost half of all heart attacks is what? It blew my mind. It's not the arm pain, it's not the jaw pain, it's not the sweating, it's not the anxiety. The first symptom in almost half of all heart attacks is death. Dead before you hit the ground. No second chances, no open heart surgery, no paddles, no nothing, you're just dead. That's alarming. I would like a heads up if that was coming. And what are the causes of heart disease? For the most part, we know there's a direct correlation to stress, to nutrition, and to exercise. Again, there are other factors, but those are the big 3 when it comes to those. Let's think about those 3, and we'll come back to them in a second. Cancer, a close second, almost 580,000 deaths per year. That's 1 in 4 people. That means that somebody on this call knows somebody, loves somebody, or is somebody that's dealt with cancer. I know it's touched my family. Now, cancer is a little bit more of an ambiguous subject. For the most part, we know that there's a direct correlation to stress, lack of exercise, poor nutrition. There are other types of cancer, but those big 3 keep popping up. There's been a 30% increase since 1975. Again, before I was born to now, 30% increase in cancers. Our genetics changed 30% that much? Are we still pinning genetics for cancer? No, something else is going on. Diabetes. I used to think this was a minor inconvenience for dessert, but it kills 270,000 people per year. Close to 26 million people have diabetes, and another 80 million, bringing us up to over 100 million people as pre-diabetic. What are the causes of diabetes? Well, at least for type 2, we know that there's a direct nutrition component. There's a physical activity component. And then yes, stress can play a role in those types of things. Again, what are those 3 things keep popping up? We have control over those 3 things. That's a common thing because I get to choose what goes into my body and my kid's body. I get to choose if I'm physically active or not. And I get to choose what stresses me out for the most part. Even if we're in a stressful situation as humans with frontal brain function, we can actually move on and move forward, heal from, move out of those stressful situations. We do have a choice. There's been a 300% increase in obesity in kids since 1975. My God, man, it's just been on a downward slope since 75. 26% of kids aged 3 to 5, a quarter of them are obese, not just pudgy, not just husky, not just growing into their weight, they're obese. 40% of teens aged 16 to 19 are obese. There's a problem out there. And it's not just an inconvenience. It's not just a self-esteem issue. It's a death. It's a life and death issue. And a bonus, again, not to bash medicine. Thank God for medicine. It saves lives on a regular basis. But if we were counting on medicine to make us healthier, that's why we're ranked number 47th in the United States in World Health Statistics. Again, the Olympics have been canceled, but last I checked, there's not a medal for 47th place. Approximately 128,000 deaths year due to negative drug reactions of properly, not misused, abused, or suicide, but properly prescribed and properly used medications, 128,000 deaths per year. It's not my opinion. That's straight out of a Harvard medical study. That's the numeric equivalent of 2 jumbo jets crashing every single day, and 72,000 deaths per year with the opioid overdoses. Again, we're pushing 200,000 deaths due to medications of misuse and proper use. That's a problem. And my God, that was depressing. Let me take a sip of water here. But there's hope. I'm not here to depress you or scare you. I wanted to give you some strategies. We have this thing called a brain, and we got to start using it and supporting it. Our brain and nervous system controls every aspect of your existence 24 hours a day. It's solely responsible for filtering and managing whatever stress you encounter. The ability of this nervous system to adapt is the definition of health. Man, life throws us some challenges, but if we actually adapt to it, we can get stronger. Stress in and of itself, if you think about it on a basic level, actually can make you stronger. Theoretically and actually, doing push-ups is a physical stress for my pec muscles. If I'm in shape and I've done push-ups before and I'm strong enough, those push-ups, that stress makes me stronger. If I'm woefully out of shape, 10 push-ups would ruin my week. It's not the push-ups that's the problem. It's the body that has to deal with it. It's the nervous system in the body that has to adapt to that challenge. But how do we manage? Awareness is key. I wanted to give you awareness of the types of stressors. Of course, we have to avoid those things. We can't just leave it up to our nervous system to deal with overwhelming amounts of stress. The first type of stress is a physical type of stress. Birth trauma, poor posture, staying indoors all day, slips and falls, poor sleep, stress. These are all types of things. These are mandated by our government right now in quarantines. But yeah, a lot of these things can be problematic if we're just stuck indoors all day. But it doesn't have to be in a child age or adult age. It can happen at birth. 80% of normal childbirths, this is straight out of a medical study, result in injuries to that neck, cervical spine. The average C-section puts upwards of 60 plus pounds of pulling on a baby's neck and brainstem. Again, not my opinion, that's straight out of medical literature. And the average male hits his head in a significant way. That's quoted from a study 400 times before the age of 18. Now, I thought that number was a bit absurd, and then I had 5 boys. I'm pretty sure every single one of my boys has hit their head 400 times in a significant way this week. Stuff happens. And if you thought I was exaggerating on that C-section, we have a whistle while you work C-section video right here for us all to watch. It's not too gory. I didn't go to the dark corners of YouTube to find the worst C-section. My God, there's worse, and I've seen them. This is a whistle while you work C-section. The doctor is literally whistling. This is not an emergency. This is not a life-saving C-section at the last minute. This was a planned C-section. It's about a 20-second video. But I'm going to narrate this video while they're talking. You'll hear him whistling, but I want you to see and experience what's happening to this baby's brain and neurology. This is the vacuum pump that's being attached to that very delicate, malleable skull.
Come on, buddy.
You're going to see him crank his head.
Ears of a girl.
Listen.
Ears of a girl. Make you cute for the camera.
You got the suction of a mother and the strength of a male doctor pulling, supportive.
Look at those big old testicles, though. Bottom of the boy.
Enough stress for that baby's delicate brain
Bottom of the
stem.
boy.
And neck.
Well, he sure had lots of
Doctor overturned record
Yeah,
time
that was the
getting
problem.
past that cord. Now, did you know that the cord continues to pump? The umbilical cord continues to pump for about 20 or 30 minutes after a baby's born. Now, everything in the body happens for a very intelligent reason. We tend to try and bypass that and ignore that intelligence, but it's pumping something. What do you think it's pumping? Blood, nutrients, intestinal flora, hormones, everything's naturally being pumped in that child because does a mother's milk come in immediately? Of course not, and it doesn't need to. It got this gigantic boost, this gigantic meal of nutrients and blood and flora and all these good things to connect and empower that baby in that first seconds of life. And that has been cut off, literally. And we've pulled and twisted and torqued the baby's brainstem. We're not just talking about their joints and their TMJ. We can talk about that, torticollis and latching issues, but we're talking about a brainstem. The brainstem is ground zero for the fight or flight response. It's not a stretch to see that that baby, 5 seconds old, is in full-blown damaged, disconnected fight or flight. And we'll talk about that fight or flight spectrum, the sensory spectrum, the sympathetic spectrum a little bit later, but you would imagine that being stuck in fight or flight from the moment that you're born is not a good thing. I'm not here to bash C-sections. C-sections save lives. They're absolutely necessary in so many cases, but it doesn't minimize the stress. It doesn't matter why you did. It does matter on an emotional and spiritual level, but my God, it doesn't matter to that child's neurology. Good intentions or bad intentions or impatient doctors doesn't change the neurological damage and disconnect that 60 to plus 90 pounds on a baby's neck and brainstem, which brings us to the second stress, emotional stress. Now we're talking, we could spend 5 hours on emotional stress. And these aren't judgment statements. These are straight from CDC websites. 1 in 4 women are taking antidepressant medications. 400% increased usage in these medications from 2005 to 2008. And it blows my mind that that's a 12-year-old study. I can't wait to see these updated statistics because I know it's only worse. The FDA proposed that makers of all antidepressant medications update the warnings on the labeling to include warnings of increased risk of suicidal thinking and behavior in young adults and children. It's not my opinion, that's straight out of the physician's desk reference. In a 2005 government survey, it was found that 11% of psychiatrists utilize talk therapy for all their patients. What are the other 89% getting? Again, I'm not here to bash medication, but the idea that these medications have no side effects, or the idea that the safety and efficacy of drugs have been tested for longer than 6 months, it's just not there. But a majority of these people, so many people are taking them for years, if not decades, if not lifetimes. There's physical stressors, there's emotional stressors, which brings us to the third stress, chemical stressors. Anything that goes into your body that's not a nutrient is potentially a stress. Over medication, antibiotics, don't get me started on those. In the early 1980s, pediatricians overwhelmingly agreed that antibiotics do not help with ear infections. They actually set the child up for immune system failure. But what's the number one prescribed medication of all of pediatrics? Antibiotics for ear infections. Drives me nuts because we're damaging a gut. The gut is the second brain, according to neurologists. We don't want to overstimulate and stress out and damage that gut. Long story, I'll deal with that later. Low calorie, low fat foods are problematic. High fructose corn syrup, hormonal imbalances, the inflammation diet that is the Western diet. We can't continually pump junk into our system and not expect us to stress out that nervous system and the brain and neurology. Of all the workshops I've ever done in my entire life, this next slide might be my favorite. My friend sent me this and he said, you got to see this. You're not going to believe it. I thought he was making it up, but here you go. In a world that's obsessed with optics, my God, here we go. Complete your meal with a mega jug. It's basically a bucket of chicken, but they filled it up with Pepsi for only $2.99. And KFC will donate $1 in all their generosity to the Junior Diabetes Research Foundation. Help us find a cure. #cure. Again, I understand that the Junior Diabetes Research Foundation does a lot of work for type 1 diabetes, but in a world that's obsessed with optics, my God, have a little sensitivity to the subject. Why are we so disconnected that we're so obsessed with finding cures that we can't take a closer look at what's causing these things? And these things being anxiety, these things being ADHD, these things being autism. There's so many different stressors just bombarding our kids' brain and neurology, and these being the big three. So your brain and neurology can only take so much before it says, I am done, enough already. When the brain and neurology kicks into fight or flight, it's called the sympathetic response. What happens during fight or flight? Well, let's think of a caveman. If I'm running from a grizzly bear, my senses go through the roof. That's a good thing. I need to be able to see better, hear better. My sense of touch goes up, helps with balance and proprioception. That's great if I'm running from a bear. But the digestive system and immune system kind of turn off and turn down. Why? How important is it to digest breakfast if I'm about to be breakfast? How important is it to fight an ear infection, reflux? How important is it to fight the coronavirus, the allergies, ADHD? I mean, all these different things that can overwhelm the immune system. It's not important to fight those little things when we're fighting a bear. The surge in adrenaline and cortisol, these are all just ramping things up and up and up. But if my brain cannot process that sensory input, it becomes a sensory processing disorder. That spills over for some kids is they can't sit still. Yeah, they're happy, but my God, they can't sit still. A lot of times that can spill over as anxiety, an emotional spillover. And that's where so many of us are. We don't have an official diagnosis of ADHD, but our brain is just keep getting pummeled from the day we're born with the foods we eat, with the environmental toxins we're exposed to our physical sedentary lives, to our emotional overwhelm, our timelines, our deadlines, our mortgage. And it's like, our brain's like, I'm done. And you're exhausted, but you can't sleep. You got the dark circles under your eyes due to adrenal fatigue. Our physiology, our lives, and how we feel is screaming at us. And we just refuse to listen. We choose to sedate. We choose to disconnect. And I do it personally. We sedate with foods. We sedate with pornography. We sedate with opioids. We sedate with red wine. We put it in Yeti tumblers and hide it from other people. But the fact of the matter is we're disconnecting from the problem that's penetrated every aspect of our existence. The nervous system and body are in a complete shutdown, overwhelmed type of mode. You cannot be in a state of adaptation and healing and state fight or flight at the same time. That's not my opinion. That's from a stem cell biologist, Bruce Lipton. So many of us are just stuck in this fight or flight world. We're surviving, but we're not adapting. We're not thriving. And that is the world of autism. That's the world of ADHD and sensory processing disorder. Autism is a sensory challenge. What are we talking about? The sensory spectrum. It's a spectrum challenge, the neurological spectrum, the sympathetic spectrum. We have whole workshops and conversations on this, but know that a child with autism, a child with ADHD, a child with sensory issues, or even anxiety is a child whose brain and neurology, get this, is stuck in that fight or flight overwhelm. Any one of those stressors can overwhelm this. This is another perspective from another specialist named Donna Jackson Nakazawa. And she wasn't just specialist because she researched this, she lived it. And actually, I'll quote her in her story. This is like the ultimate paragraph at the end. And I got to hit the ground running here. But she had a front row seat to her father's untimely death when she was 12 years old. And she was a daddy's girl. And she said, and I quote, "That was the day my childhood ended." And she was a healthy, happy, connected child up to age 12. And age 13 came, 14 came and she started to notice she had started allergies and asthma, and her health just started to tank. And when she was in her 20s, she was in a full-blown autoimmune disorder. Her life was just churning to an end, and she wished she was dead. And she had access to the best medicine and doctors in the world. In fact, she partnered with Yale trying to unravel this, and she came to this conclusion. And this is the ultimate paragraph in that. She said that her physician explained that ongoing adversity in childhood leads to a chronic state of fight, flight, or freeze. And researchers at Yale had recently shown that when inflammatory stress hormones flood a child's body and brain, that they alter the genes, the genetic expression that oversee our stress reactivity, resetting the stress response to high for life. This increases the risk of inflammation, which manifests later in cancer, heart disease, and autoimmune diseases like mine. That's the future of a nervous system, brain, and person that's stuck in fight or flight. But the right now is anxiety. It's stress. It's not your circumstances. It's not your environment. Yes, those play a role. But it's the brain and neurology that's stuck in fight or flight that literally has the power to reset your genetics. And that's not just Donna Jackson Nakazawa's opinion. This is a study just last summer from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. They found that childhood trauma leaves scars that are genetic, not just emotional. And what they were actually studying was the barbaric act of shaken baby syndrome. And they were able to find that trauma to this brain and brainstem actually set those genes to high for life, reset that nervous system to high for life. Now, again, this might be a controversial statement, but I will go there because it's important. But explain to me, other than intent and legality, what is the difference to damage to the brainstem from a vacuum extraction that pulls 60, 70, 80 pounds and a drunk dad? Again, there are different types of trauma. They can traumatize the brain with shaken baby syndrome, but damage to a brainstem is damage to a brainstem. The brainstem being ground zero for the fight or flight response. We have to deal with this harsh reality because the nervous system is what regulates every aspect of your existence. And that nervous system is measurable. These unhealthy neurological patterns happen every single time when the nervous system is overwhelmed and your body's no longer able to express life. But how do you know if that's happening? How do you know if your nervous system is overwhelmed or if you have these patterns? Well, how do you know if you have a high cholesterol or a cavity? How do you know if you have breast cancer or heart disease? How do you know if you have diabetes or osteoporosis? How do you know if you have cancer? If you say I would feel it, you'd be wrong. You don't always feel these things till it's way, way, way too late. How do you know if your nervous system is not functioning properly? And the fact of the matter is you don't. You don't always know. And the reason for that is a very scientific fact of the over 90+% of our nervous system feels nothing. And we'll come back to that later. So you can't count on how you feel. You have to measure these things. And we have a measuring technology, and I and other chiropractors utilize this technology all across the world. One of the three technologies we use, this was developed by neurologists, is a surface EMG. It measures the electroactivity, the stress, the tension, the noise on those muscles. And if you're just sitting here nice and relaxed in our practice and we're measuring every single level of your spine, we can expect, based on neurological data from medical world, a certain tone throughout that spine. But if there's pulling, tugging, tension from birth trauma, from slips and falls, from sitting in your house, from being emotionally overwhelmed, yes, it will show up on our scan. You can see on that one scan all those red and blue bars. That's that neurological overwhelm we're talking about. We're looking for that white pear-shaped pattern. The second scan, again, developed, researched, and studied in the medical world, is called thermography. And it's measuring that neurological connection through temperature variance throughout that spine. One of the primary functions of your brain is to keep you at a certain temperature, but with inflammation and overwhelm, we can see that. I'm not gonna guess. The last scan, this is where we totally geek out. Harvard Medical Review just did a study on this last summer. It's called heart rate variability. Heart rate variability is the medical standard for measuring that sympathetic fight or flight response, and it's balanced between parasympathetics. Long story short, sitting in a quiet wellness center by yourself with you, your brain, and neurology, you shouldn't be in fight or flight. We don't have any grizzly bears or beehives in the room, should not be overwhelmed. But if your nervous system is stuck in fight or flight, wouldn't you want to know? Wouldn't you want to know if you had an irritation on the brainstem? That's exactly what we're measuring so that we can give you a GPS, not just some random directions from what we think might be going on. We measure exactly where you are and exactly where you're going so that you can have that blueprint right in front of you. How powerful is this nervous system? Again, every aspect of your existence filtered through that. A nervous system that is overwhelmed kicks into the fight or flight spectrum, which is the spectrum of anxiety. The nervous system for your muscles is the same one for your organs and your energy. And if you need a visual example, this is the hero from my generation. And I always ask people when I go in public, how many bones did he break when he fell off this horse? That's Christopher Reeve, of course. He was literally Superman. He broke one bone, one stupid bone right along the brainstem. Now, again, his lights were turned off. And after that injury, his stomach didn't work anymore. His lungs didn't work anymore. His muscles obviously didn't work anymore. His hair fell out. His immune system went away. He died because he had an immune system failure that couldn't fight off a common infection. And he just died because he had an infection there. His heart failed and everything. Everything went wrong because of one spot in his brainstem. So what are these 3 secrets? What are these 3 strategies? We're going to haul through these, and I will find a way to everybody that's engaged. If you want to comment below, we do have a comment box through the Zoom. We also have it on Facebook. I should have encouraged you from the beginning to comment there. I will send these to you in a PDF form or an email. But secret number 1 is we have to do some work on our own. We have to increase our capacity with a wellness lifestyle. You have to move, you have to sweat. And again, there's no one best fitness. Now, again, everybody at CrossFit or Zumba or wherever they're at, they're going to tell you theirs is the best. Have at it. If you're sweating, if you're burning calories, if you're moving muscles, if you're lifting, doing strength training, I'm happy for you. Muscles eat fat, so don't just do cardio. You have to eat well. Every animal on the planet has a genetically designed diet, meaning if I gave the diet of a tiger to a giraffe, the giraffe's not going to be healthy. Why do humans think we're any different? Because this was the Bible for like 75 years. I don't have time to go in the food pyramid, but if you think about it, it's a pizza. We got the dough on the bottom, the sauce in the middle, and the meat on the top with a little cheese. You got a pizza. So there's your food pyramid. We'll skip that guy. He's old, but he's not a big fan of it. He's a cardiologist. But let's talk about this last one. Think well. So we got move well, eat well, think well. You're talking to yourself anyway. Why not say something positive? The idea that negative emotions and thoughts and mantras don't have an effect on your physiology. We're not talking about your self-esteem. We're talking about your body, your health, your muscles, your organs. The example I'll give you for that is one time it was about 2 o'clock in the morning and I thought I heard some footsteps. I thought I heard a door shut, but it really got real when I heard the glass break downstairs. And I was actually pretty proud of myself. I went downstairs, Johnny Rambo, just ready, guns blazing, ready to fight what I knew had to be an axe-wielding serial killer. Turned out it was my dog pulled a plate off the counter, shattered the plate. There was no threat. That threat was completely imagined. Nothing harmed me. It was just a thought that brought me to there. Do you think I went back to sleep right after that? No, it's probably a couple hours. Do you think my gut sank? Do you think my heart raced? Do you think my hormones were surging? An imagined event that happened in a moment changed my physiology for an entire night. I'm still talking about it years later, but the fact is that sometimes the threat is real. It might not be an axe-wielding serial killer, but it might be a job, a relationship, a child, a disconnect, abuse, things that we haven't dealt and healed from. But when we take responsibility for every aspect of our lives, it really narrows our excuses. We're ultimately responsible for fixing that. Secret number 2, this can be transformative. And you only have to do it for a week. Get an app like MyFitnessPal or MyPlate and literally write down every single thing that you eat and every physical activity you do for a week. If you're nerdy and you like to track that data, macros and micros all throughout the month and the year in your life, have at it. But it is eye-opening. I actually worked with a trainer where I had to send him a picture of everything that crossed my lips as far as food and drink, and it radically changed how I ate because I just stopped noshing on everything. So write those stressors, take a detailed inventory. But secret number 3, and we're wrapping up here in the next few minutes here. Good luck with all those other strategies if your brain and neurology is stuck in fight or flight. And I don't say that dismissively, but we live our lives through our nervous system. All these pieces to the puzzle are trying to come together with a lifestyle that does not have a foundation of a brain and nervous system that even willing to give you a chance. That type of disconnect, neurological overwhelm, that's at the heart of anxiety, the heart of depression, the heart of ADHD. And of course, there's so many other layers to it, but at the heart of it all is a nervous system that could not adapt and heal. And what we do is we measure, we monitor, we adjust. That's what adjustments are all about. The purpose of an adjustment is to very gently, specifically stimulate and reconnect those areas of disconnect that happen God knows when. We don't know why it happens or how it happens always, but we know that your life and your future is better when we're not stuck in that neurological overwhelm due directly to a nervous system that's stuck in fight or flight. So that's secret number 3 in all of this. Yes, set the table with all those other activities and lifestyle choices. But my God, have a table to set something on with a nervous system and a brain that's actually willing to help you do the work and adapt. The more you can adapt to the challenges of life, just like those push-ups that I talked about in the past, we can get stronger. Life's going to keep throwing us curveballs, whether it's an inept government or CDC or a coworker or a kid or a diet that's just less than perfect. There's always going to be something flying at us. And again, I don't say that to discourage you, but the fact of the matter is you cannot live in a bubble the rest of your life. And in fact, based on all neurological and immune system factors, living in a bubble is incredibly unhealthy. You got to get out. You got to get out there and be exposed to that. So I want to close with this inspirational story of a practice member or patient that came to me years and years and years ago, but inspires me to this day. And I talked about those thermal scans before showing disconnect. Now with this scan, white's a good thing, green's a mild irritation, blue is a problem, red is severe, black is like off the charts. You don't have to be a neurologist, pediatric chiropractor, or a rocket scientist to look at that scan and say, my God, that is awful. That is a messed up scan. And at the majority of all those irritations are right up there at the brainstem. And whenever I do this workshop in public, I always ask, I'm just curious, how old do you think this person is? How many years, how many decades do you think it took to get that bad? And the average answer is like 30, 40. Somebody usually says how old I am. That's how I feel. This is a 4-week-old baby, 28 days old, 4 weeks of life. This kid does not have decades of stress. It doesn't have a mortgage. This kid was radically unhealthy. And when the mom came in sheltering and holding this perfect little baby on the outside, you could see she was exhausted. She had the dark circles under his eyes. She hadn't slept in forever. And I said, how can I help you? And she said, this baby sleeps on average 45 minutes a day. 45 minutes, that's the longest he'd ever slept in his life. He would scream his head off, collapse for 10 minutes. And then one time he slept for 45 minutes, but this was the cycle of his life for 4 strenuous, horrible weeks of his life and her life. And she was desperate for answers. And honestly, we were one of the last stops. She had seen every specialist, had blood tests. They even did an MRI on this baby, trying to figure out what in the heck is going on with this little kid named Luke. And thank God their neighbor knew about us and knew that we had a passion, but also a purpose and a plan for serving kids. And we measured this kid and we found the challenge. He had a diagnosis of colic and reflux and all these different things. They couldn't figure out what it was, but they knew he was unhappy. He's screaming his head off that much. And we started a gentle, specific process of adjusting a 28-day-old baby. Very gentle, specific. We call it proprioceptive, neurologically focused adjustments, removing that stress from his spine. I'd love to say he floated off the table after one adjustment, but no, it took a few. But after that third adjustment, something happened that I told her would happen, but was still quite alarming. He fell asleep and did not wake up for 15 hours. He could not wake up. Now, babies need to eat every 2 or 3 hours. He could not wake up, but that was a good thing. For the first time in 28 days of his existence, he could sleep. Now, how did that happen to this little kid? I don't have to show you that video again. They wanted to have the baby on a Friday because that was her grandmother's birthday. So they stuck a vacuum on this baby's head and they pulled 3 unsuccessful tries. And finally, on the 4th, with the doctor's foot on the table, pulling with the suction of the mother and the full strength of a man, doctor pulled this baby out to this world. Now, after 3 adjustments, we kept adjusting and he kept waking up. His digestive system waked up and he was actually sleeping better. And this was after about 15 adjustments. You can see a radically different kid, a radically different neurology, a radically different potential because that stress is leaving his brainstem. Luke was not missing anything. Luke didn't need a diagnosis of colic. He needed a brain and nervous system that was working for him. Luke didn't need a different formula because her breast milk was off or a different environment. His parents loved him. They had a perfect environment for this child. The environment of his inside was what was off. And we can debate all day as to why that happened. We know why it happened with him. And again, I'm not here to bash medicine or medical doctors or the C-section process. Stuff happens, but his life is better because of this. And this is why I do what I do. It's why I love what I do. It's so that Luke and his family and families just like yours have a chance for a life that you deserve. Because honestly, we weren't created for this, but this is where so many of us are living. We're created for potential, for connection. And if you think for a second that our neurology can be disconnected from our spirituality, from our emotions, from our muscles, from our sleep, from our digestion, from our potential, from our marriages, for our potentials in college, for our potentials in employment, for our potential of life, we're just being foolish if we think we can just cherry pick and specialize medicine so much that we've disconnected from the very reality of the foundation of the table that needs to be set for these kids. And that's the opportunity that everybody has tonight, is not just guess their way through life, not just hope their way through life, but get some facts in front of you. Set the table for success. Measure that. And I know there's some people in this workshop that aren't in North Carolina. I understand. My God, I give out referrals every single day. There's a network of chiropractors that own this technology. And I'm not just talking about financially. They own it because it's the purpose of their practice is to reconnect the Lukes of life, to reconnect my kids. My kids have been through this. My 5th, who was adopted, had some birth trauma and some major disconnected issues. And his life is better, not just because he gets to live in my house, but because he gets to live a connected life. That full examination is usually $200. It takes about 45 minutes. I can't speak for the prices of other practices, but the special we're having here For anybody that wants to reach out and has seen this video and stuck with us to the end, yes, I'll send you a recording. Yes, I'll send you the research and the strategies. We also want to extend the opportunity to get checked. If we're going to finish this off and you just give me a golf clap and say that was a nice talk and we don't do anything with it, what's the point? We want you to get connected, not just with us, but with a life and a future that you've always deserved, that your children deserve, that your marriage deserves, that this community deserves. And it all begins with a test. Just get checked. That full examination is usually around $200. The special we have tonight is just $90. $90 for an individual, $150 for an entire family. Mention this video. That is not a price that we ever put online or talk about on the phones. That's something that's just for the people that have watched this video. I thank you for staying connected and leaning in with us for this entire time. If you have questions, of course, ask. I'll see if we have any on here. I didn't really encourage you guys too much to ask all these questions, but yeah, we got a couple on there and we'll check those out. I'll make sure to reach out to you personally and find those for you. Let me see. Check. There we go. Yeah, I can't pull up the chat for some reason. There it goes. Yeah, somebody just said thank you. No, thank you. It was an honor to connect with all of you guys. And I look forward, ask questions. If you're like, I don't know if I need to hear more about this exam, call me. Yeah, comment below in the Facebook. We put it on a Facebook Live, so you can reach out to us and connect with us that way. If you're a doctor and you want your patients to get this information, feel free to share. Yeah, I'll be happy to connect with them and share these strategies with anybody and everybody across the world. I thank you so much for staying tuned in and connected with us all night. If you have any questions, just reach out. I look forward to hearing from all of you soon. Take care.